Hello, this is David Brown. There's a picture of me down there in the lower left-hand corner from Dalton State College Library, and I'm excited to talk to you today about technology and diversity. And we have a really good book called Diversity and Technology, and this book, I'll be talking about it, includes a lot of good information. It's an ebook, actually. And you see this link above. I have everything in this presentation, all the links are on that website. So be sure to take a look at that. It's basically you just go to Dalton State's LibGuides and click on education, or you can type in the URL there. Um, but we're going to talk a lot about diversity and technology and universal design, which is universal design is basically saying um, when you prepare for all kinds of diversity and technology, it's going to benefit everyone. And I've got a slide here of these automatic doors at grocery stores. You may take them for granted, but at one time they weren't like that, and people put them in there for people with with wheelchairs. But they found out everyone really liked those doors, so it benefited everyone. And on the right, a lot of theaters started offering plays and captions, and they noticed something interesting. They were getting a lot of people show up. And not all of them had a disability in hearing. A lot of them had a variety of disabilities that the captions help. So when you incorporate in universal design, you're helping everyone uh, with um, technology. So that's what we're going to talk about. And there's my email address, dobrown@daltonstate.edu. So this book is called Diversity and Technology. I have a link down here, and you can also get to that through the website. So the education lib guide, but it's a really good book, and you can read it online about the challenges with diversity and technology, and it's geared towards school teachers in K-12. So here's some factors you need to consider. And you often think of disabilities, or you might have something that comes to your mind with diversity and disabilities and technology, and think of someone in a wheelchair, but there's a way more to it than that. Over 2 million people in Georgia have a diagnosed disability. That's a staggering number. So I have a question for you. When you're doing your assignments, I want you to ask yourself, could anyone with a disability complete your assignment? And that's any disability. Over 1.4 million people live in poverty in Georgia. That's a staggering a number of people. So your students are going to be, many of them in poverty. How much has it costed your assignment? So you need to ask yourself these things. An example, one county in Georgia, Gilmer County, only 12% of people there have access to 1 gigabyte internet. So something you need to consider. Is high-speed internet required for your assignment? Oh, so these are factors to consider as a school teacher. And the internet it varies across Georgia. Almost all counties have internet access, but some have high speed and some don't. So that's important to consider. What about disabilities? You'd be surprised to know that this is the percent of adults in Georgia with these disability types. So there's all kind of types they could have, and they could be hearing, vision, cognition, mobility, later independent living, though that may not be as common for K-12. But look at the bottom. Most students never tell their teacher they have a disability. And you don't know diversity just by looking at your class. There's different kinds of adult diversity, cultural diversity, diversity meaning people with disabilities, just all kinds. You will have a lot of people with diversity in your classroom. A very important thing to learn when you're dealing and communicating is that people call things different. The same objects you see there, what do you call that? I grew up calling that a toboggan. I'm from the Southern Appalachian area, and but there are other communities across America where it's called beanie or ski cap, ski hat. And what does that have to do with being a teacher? You don't know when you're communicating, especially with these assignments with technology, they may have different words for different things. So It's always something important to consider. There are a lot of great tools. You have some you may not know it. You should take a look at in Georgia View. There's a tool called Read Speaker Text Aid, and it's in Georgia View. It can help you, but your students will have access to some of these tools, and it varies at each high school, middle school, and elementary school. But this was one that not only does it translate really well, it also has over here on the left, it has ways where someone with a reading disability can zoom in on the text and it can read it out loud, or it can zoom in and make the text larger. I have a lot of these tools at the website on our LibGuide that I mentioned earlier. You need to know about internet access in Georgia. So if you get a job teaching in Fulton County, you might want to take a look at this. If you're in Gilmer County, be a lot different, right? And here's one for Dade County. So it's important to know with technology what kind of internet connection you have at your school and what they may have at home. Chromebooks are really super awesome for accessibility, and your school probably has them. But and when I say accessibility, I mean language translation tools, tools for people with attention deficit disorder, or autism. Um, Chromebooks are really good for that. So I'm actually going to show you this website. So just a second here. This is the website I'm talking about. So I mentioned this at the beginning, and this is the URL here if you want to go there. And it's right over here. And these are all of the sites that I'm mentioning in this presentation today. And this is the one about Chromebooks. So a lot of this is hot off the press. So I want you to take a look at this. So, um, and by the way, the Chromebooks, one downside to them, they may not be good for college level. So, but they're great for K-12. I've got a video, a YouTube video on that site I just showed you that has a really good short summary video about these accessibility features. I would like for you to take a look at that. Um, and that's one of the ones in the website I just showed you. So another really nice website is there's a lot of tools now that allow for live captioning. So, and this has some information about these. So let's take a look at those sites real quick. Um, we'll go to this specific one. Remember, all of these sites are at our LibGuide for this class. So these are some accessibility apps. And I want to remind you that accessibility means also diversity, not just hearing or vision impaired. But here's one called Be My Eyes, Tap Tap See. That identifies objects. So artificial intelligence can really be a big benefit when you're dealing in technology and diversity. We have an AI LibGuide at Dalton State. So this has a special area for AI tools. And what AI can do, there's a lot of AI tools that are specific for helping people perhaps who can't watch a whole video and then understand it. There are AI tools that can convert that to a shorter summary, or even convert that to a PowerPoint slide, or even convert a boring lecture to filter it down to add flashcards with it. And these have some of these AI tools. And we would, here's one called Deaf Chat. Um, that is a video relay service that connects deaf and hard hearing villages with individuals with communication assistance. Wayfinder, you may have heard about that one. It specializes in navigation for people with disabilities. So I encourage you to take a look at your LibGuide for this class. There's another look at it. Um, so There's another really nice website. It's about using technology to support diverse learners, and I really like this site. So it's also listed as one of those that I showed you. I'm going to take a look at that because this got some really good tips on it. So it talks about working with what you have. So you need to know, do you have a Chromebooks? what kind of devices do you have? As a Dalton State student, you can get, of course, our computer labs, and you can get check out a laptop. But what do your students have? Um, Use technology to benefit learners on a social, economic, emotional level. So we're talking about autism, and of course there are variations of autism. SOSH is an app that targets social development through conversation. Remove cultural barriers. Um, Unite peers with diverse backgrounds. This has got some really good information on that. Stay inclusive. It's really awesome websites. We're fortunate to have so much information about technology and diversity out there. Um, Remember that a lot of ways we got to where we're at are old technologies, are old research studies that were biased. And if this is an early problem with artificial intelligence, a lot of it has a bias towards certain groups in society. So airbags, for example, were tested on big male dummies, and this caused a lot of deaths for women and children in the early going. Um, so keep that in mind when you're working through your assignment. You need to know there's, of course, a lot of diversity in the United States, and there's no better example of that than Georgia. And look how Georgia has changed in the last 24 years or so. And there's even more diversity since 2021. Only about 50% white. So, and even among the white population, there's a huge diversity. So, Atlanta suburbs now, a huge segment of the Atlanta suburbs are people who weren't born in Georgia, who came down from maybe perhaps the New England area or out west. However, in upper northeast Georgia and the mountainous regions, you still have a population of whites that culturally is pretty similar. So you need to get familiarize yourself with your school. And even in the black population, there are inner city areas of Atlanta that may be low income black. Then now there's middle class black neighborhoods, subdivisions. So, and everyone should know about, of course, the Hispanic Latino population continues to increase. So it's important when you're talking about technology and diversity. And Dalton is surprisingly unique. So if you get a job teaching in Dalton, you may not know uh, this was a big area for the Cherokee. Of course, there aren't many Cherokee living here now. Most of them live on the reservation in Western North Carolina. Um, but it is an interesting part of our history. We do have a synagogue, a mosque in as well in Dalton, and just a very diverse town compared to the outlying smaller towns around Dalton. Um, Now, what would be a good tool for you, a database in Galileo for your students? Now, for you to research, a great tool is some of the education databases like ERIC and ProQuest Education. You could get some ideas there, but SIRS is something really terrific. It's geared towards technology and diversity, and it is available through Galileo, not only for you, but when you become a teacher, your students will have access to it. And the School of Ed offers training in SIRS, but I encourage you to take a look at it. You can go find it in Galileo under databases under the letter S. And you can certainly email me any questions you have about SIRS. I really like SIRS for your students, especially. In higher ed, uh, there's usually a disability coordinator. Now, there used to be, you might have heard of the term diversity, inclusion. Um, Pretty much now what we have in higher ed are offices of accessibility. You may not have that in your high school or middle school or elementary school, but we have that on the college level. And that's important to know because you may have a child in your classroom who is looking at college, and I always encourage them to get familiar with what they're going to have there at the college they eventually go to. So it's kind of good for you to get encourage your students to find that information out. Um, and our accessibility coordinator, as I mentioned, is Andrea Robertson. She's be great to talk to and to learn more about technology and diversity. Um, Section 508. of the Rehabilitation Act is really important to know about. It means that federal departments have to accommodate employees, you may have heard of this, design accessible websites, procure accessible information technology, and guess what? This applies to everybody. So this means when you come up with an assignment, it has to be accessible. So fortunately, modern day programs and like Microsoft PowerPoint, they will automatically put a description on your pictures you use. Those kind of things you have to do that. So what I'm saying is when you have an assignment, it has to have a video has to have captions. A picture has to have a description in the alt tags. And you can right click on PowerPoint pictures, and usually it's already in there now with artificial intelligence. We'll look at your picture and tell you, describe what it is, but it may be interpreted wrong, so you might have to correct it. But these kind of features are the law now. So, and this is why there are so many elevators and handicap parking places, but it also applies to technology. So if you ever have questions about this, let me know. Andrea Robertson's an expert on this as well. This is a really good video. So I have it in you. I would recommend you watch this video. It is about these students who have a variety of disabilities, and they each talk about the challenges with technology, and it's things you may have never thought about. So do me a favor and watch this video. It's on the website that we keep talking about, the Education LibGuide, under the Technology and Diversity tab. So I've mentioned this word universal design. What do I mean by that? Well, it's the design of products and environments to be usable by all people to the greatest extent possible without the need for adaptation or specialist design. So what it means is basically when you're doing all this work to make sure your assignments as a teacher can be done by everyone equally, well, it helps everyone, even people who don't have a disability or who may not be considered diverse. For example, um, shopping centers used to have you used to have to come indoor and you have to open the door to get into a shopping center to grocery shopping. So they made these new design doors for people with grocery carts and for people in wheelchairs, but they realized everybody likes these doors. So they benefited everyone. Um, a lot of theaters, I think I mentioned this earlier, have added captioning because they realize not only do people with hearing disabilities like that, a lot of people just don't focus well and like to see a play in text in captions. So when you're doing universal design, you're helping everyone. You should know that most browsers nowadays have a feature to read aloud. So Microsoft Edge is probably the best. Now, I mentioned Chromebook. Chromebooks are the best hardware. The best browser is Edge and then probably Google Chrome. Edge has this feature that allows you to read aloud. So you just simply go to your tools and it'll read out loud, but I want to remind, and you see the on this side, the read aloud in the upper left corner. This is important to know. The database SERS has read aloud features. All of Galileo should have things that read aloud. When you get to schools, your students, anything online should be able to be read out loud now. If it is not, you can go to your ease of access settings on computers, and there are a variety of places, things you can do to make things more accessible under these settings. More than likely, though, it's built in because, as I mentioned, this is the law now. You have to have accessibility built into your assignments. At Dalton State, we even have to have the syllabus has to be accessible. So, we always tell teachers when you're going to the K-12 environment, any kind of documents you put up online anywhere, make sure they're accessible. It's really easy to tell. You just click check accessibility, and this is under the review tab in Microsoft. Google Docs has the same features, by the way. Of course, PDFs have the ability to read out loud. So if you're using a PDF, you're probably okay for accessibility. And you just simply go to View, Read Out Loud, and it'll read it out loud for you. You should know this because all your students could probably benefit from that, right? I know I could. I like to hear things read out loud. Make sure your videos are captioned. YouTube is a great place. You know, you probably have access to videos for your students, and chances are they have captions and transcripts. But if you go outside your traditional sources and assign something, make sure that it has captions and a transcript. If you use YouTube, any new video legally has to have this, but it does it by default. So you don't have to add them. But if you're assigning any video, make sure they have both. It makes it much easier for students to have captioning and a transcript as well. These transcripts give you a lot of options. You can go in there and look for certain words if the student can. You can edit your videos to add captions and correct them. And the red underline means something may be wrong. So what I would go back and do is I can go in and change these. So make sure you know how to edit captions. You may not have to, especially if you stick with just the videos your school provides. You can search for videos under features in YouTube that just have captions, but I will tell you it is becoming more and more common that all videos in YouTube are captioned, and the same goes for educational videos. Um, so keep that in mind. Now, Galileo is a tool you'll have in Georgia as you have it, and your students will have it. Um, Everything in Galileo has the ability to be read out loud. So we've tested this with browsers in the library, and we found that Microsoft Edge browser can read anything out loud in Galileo. So that would be important. That's good to know. If you're in school in Georgia, especially, stick with Galileo if you can, because it's pretty darn accessible. Galileo is really good for accessibility, as so are those Chromebooks we mentioned. There are videos you need to, when you start in your school, you need to know what videos you have available. At Dalton State, for you, we have academic videos online and films on demand. Academic videos online is under A, and it's the one actually I would recommend. But both of these have both captions and transcripts. I mentioned just about everything in Galileo can be read out loud. There are many encyclopedias, and we try to encourage people to use scholarly encyclopedias like Funk and Wagnalls and the ones in Galileo instead of Wikipedia. All of these we have in Galileo can be read out loud. And it's really obvious. You just click listen. And this is important to pass along to your students. I mentioned ReadSpeaker TextAid in Georgia View. I would like for you to take a look at this. So you don't have to do this now, but next time you're at Georgia View, go to Campus Resources and click ReadSpeaker TextAid. And you might be thinking, well, that's great for me. What about my kids when I teach? They will have similar features, and they may actually have ReadSpeaker TextAid. I hope they do. But I want you to take a look at it because it'll get you familiar with some common tools found in modern day learning management systems. And I mentioned ReadSpeaker TextAid has a lot of stuff. Everything in Galileo has something called Doc Reader, and you just click the listen button. Accessibility options are there for you, but they'll be there for your students. Your students may not use Georgia View, but you should take a look at your accessibility options. They are under account settings that you have, and you can go in there and change your font size. You can do all kind of things you may not have known about in Georgia View. As a teacher, this is very important. So as teachers at Dalton State, you're not a teacher here probably, but your teacher has a lot of power in um, Georgia View for restrictions. So this would be things that could help people such you can give more time to students with a disability. We legally have to do that, by the way. You need to get familiar with your accessibility features in whatever you're giving your test in when you get into your school, because you'll probably have a student who has legally has to be allowed more time, and that's really common at Dalton State. I'm an instructor here, and we have to know how to do this to allow students to have more time if they have a diagnosed disability. And some of these disabilities may surprise you. They're amazing. Um, these This is important to know right here. When you're assigning maps, did you know a huge amount of people are colorblind? Color-coded display, small text, all of these can prevent problems. So I'm not saying don't use them, but you need to know that. Most students who are colorblind in your class are not going to tell you. Um, and older students, like myself, we got some vision issues, right? But your students may have that as well. And it may not just be near or farsightedness. It could be, and all the times it involves color. So here's an example. One of these over here on the left of if you had this an assignment, it's very clear. You can see green, um, but over here you can't. You can see blue for the ocean, but you can't see the green that you could over here. There are a variety of colorblind issues. 8% of men are colorblind. So think about that for a second. And the most common thing is distinguishing between red and green. Very important. Your website should be accessible. You probably don't have to worry about that as a teacher. We do here at Dalton State, and there is a really cool website, wave.webaim.org, can tell you if your school website is accessible or the site you use for your class, if it's accessible. So we mentioned these links. Here are a few more, and all of these should be at that website I mentioned. Um, so I'm actually going to go to that website one more time. And so this is the website I mentioned. It's the LibGuide/education right there. And under technology and diversity, all of this has the sites we talked about today. And there's that video. Please watch that. It's just absolutely amazing. All these challenges that diversity, disabilities with technology, all the things you should know. And let me know if you have any questions. My email, as I mentioned, is dobrown@daltonstate.edu. And I want to thank everyone for listening. And I hope you have a good semester and come and visit us in the library. Thank you.